to see whether or not, A, is it true? And if it is true, will the U.S. respond and how? So stand by. We're tracking that story, trying to figure it out as we go.
We're also looking at this story from Alaska Airlines. Are safety concerns about babies riding on planes, what experts are saying next.
And
Bill?
families up in arms yesterday. Their kids were pulled from a school to make room for migrants. How the New York City mayor now is defending that and maybe making some different decisions based on the budget in New York, which could tell you a lot. It's coming up.
Floyd Benefit Field is vulnerable to all weather conditions. So what does that mean? That my child's school will be their shelter this winter. My child goes through metal detectors every day. They were walking in with suitcases.
Jorge has always put the ones he loves.
Cameras and talk before he goes into court, and sometimes she does as well. So I just want to hang with it for a moment, and apparently this time, at least on the outside, she's not going to. Pleasant day in New York City, not like Des Moines, Iowa, right? It's not the frozen tundra.
But
we're going to see the judge. I mean, maybe you get a final decision today. I think we kind of all know what it's about. He already forecasted that before we got to this phase of the trial, but we'll hear from the president coming up momentarily. All right, that's Lower Manhattan.
Letitia James in the building. And a United Airlines flight making an emergency landing after an open door indicator lit up shortly after takeoff. So what is going on here? It comes just less than a week after a door plug blew out midair on an Alaskan Airlines flight. However, the United jet was not the same model as the Alaska plane. The United flight was headed from Sarasota, Florida to Chicago yesterday when the light came on. Pilots alerted dispatchers and rerouted the plane to Tampa, and thankfully that plane landed safely. And that harrowing Alaska Airlines incident is renewing fears about babies lap sitting on airplanes. 3 babies were on laps when the door plug blew out. Thankfully, none of them were near the open panel. An aviation expert told the Washington Post, quote, if there had been a passenger holding a kid close to where that panel blew off, the explosive force was such that the kid being held would have been torn from the hands of their parents and they would have been sucked out of the plane. Officials recommend buying a ticket for infants and strapping them in a car seat, and that will be a real
remarkable stuff.
Wake-up call for a lot of parents. Like, obviously, you want to comfort your child when you're on an unusual experience, like on a plane, especially when their ears adjust to that. But it might be the safest thing to do to have to go through that expense and buy them a ticket. 2
things to add on that. Just it was at an altitude of about 16,000 feet. Had a gun at 30,000, be an entirely different matter because the pressure would be much more intense. And credit to the Boeing CEO. He came out and said we made mistakes and we need to own it. So we've got that going. In the meantime, 22 minutes past the hour. Got some breaking news overseas.
We do. We have new turmoil that is surrounding shipping in the Middle East. Armed hijackers wearing military uniforms taking over an oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman, and now apparently changing their course toward Iranian waters. What is happening? Let's bring in former Secretary of State and Fox News contributor Mike Pompeo. This all happening right now. What do we think about all of this as President Trump makes his way to the courthouse?
Well, Dana, this is symptomatic of the failed policy of deterrence in the region. We've seen now, 120 plus strikes on Americans. We've seen them not only threaten this ship, if this reporting from this morning is true, but we've seen them force commercial vessels to divert. And we've now seen us have to defend against missiles coming at our naval ships in the Red Sea. This is the direct result of coddling the Iranians. When the administration came in, they flipped our policy. They tried to negotiate with the so-called moderates in Iran, and you can now see whether it's the events of barbarity on October 7th and the Hamas terrorists, or whether it's the rockets that are raining down from Lebanon into Israel. This is what happens when America loses deterrence, when our adversaries no longer fear us, and the risk to commercial shipping in the sea, the Red Sea, the Suez Canal in the north and the Bab el-Mandeb in the south,
and
is very real.
Mr. Secretary, if you could bear with us, we have 2 breaking news stories happening at the same time. If you could just stand by there. We also have President Trump arriving at court, and we want to bring that to you because sometimes he does talk to the media on the way in, and also because this judge has said he cannot give the closing statement as he wanted to. Bill, join me here if you'd like. So the judge said no to that. President Trump does want to make some comments. I don't know if it'll be before or after. I would imagine it might be before.
Yeah, a couple of things going on with the trial. Apparently, the request was put in to delay today's proceeding because Melania Trump, the First Lady, just lost her mom, and the former president asked if he could go back to Florida and spend time with his family and her, and the judge denied that. Apparently, there was a suggestion through Trump's lawyers that the judge felt that the security guards at the courthouse perhaps had already been paid for and didn't want to waste the money, but that excuse has not been fully fleshed out. However, there was a request. There was also a request for Donald Trump to make his case for himself, and that was denied as well by the judge.
This case and the conviction of President Trump appears to be unprecedented in New York. We had our lawyers check here. They were unable to find any other examples of New York State convicting someone for inflating the value of real estate assets without a victim. In addition, this judge, as Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, has pointed out, has already ruled that President Trump had misbehavior here. So this question now is like the scope and scale of that, and whether and how a punishment would be rendered by this judge. As you point out, that could happen today.
Yeah. Trump's lawyers have said consistently that the valuations on the property were subjective and that banks were not harmed by any alleged inaccuracies because they actually profited from the loans that were made. And there was a leading real estate expert who testified on Trump's behalf who made a pretty strong case for him. But whether or not the judge takes that into consideration, I think is doubtful, frankly. He sent a strong forecast months ago when he ruled against Trump before he came into this courtroom, and now the AG will, in all likelihood, get in front of a microphone at some point today and make the case that she won, right? I mean, this was her quest going back several years to get Trump. And she pretty much said that repeatedly on camera.
You know, she campaigned on it, and then she's been continuing to do a lot of media appearances. Just so everyone knows, it's very unusual for an attorney general to not be manning the helm at the headquarters of the attorney general's office, but to be in a courtroom anytime this case has been on. But she has been there. There's been obviously a lot of media attention on this case, and for good reason, and she's not missed out on any of that.
Yeah. The judge was concerned that Trump would make some sort of campaign speech in court. Maybe, maybe not. But his attorney was, I mean, we played the clip about half an hour ago. Alina Habba said earlier today, if you don't have him say it, I'm going to say it. So we'll follow that along. There will be a camera spray inside the courtroom, but we won't be able to follow it minute by minute. We'll just have to read the emails that flow out of court today.
Mr. Secretary, Mike Pompeo is still with us. So let's go back to him as we follow that breaking news and get back to this. I want to play for you this soundbite from Anthony Blinken about the consequences for the Houthis if they continue these attacks on ships, as we have the breaking news as that ship that has just been boarded is turned around and was going towards Iran. Watch him here.
As we've made clear, and many other countries made clear, there'll be consequences for the Houthis' actions. We've also repeatedly tried to make clear to Iran, as other countries have as well, that the support that they're providing to the Houthis, including for these actions, needs to stop. It's not in their interest to see the conflict escalated, and we're not the only ones who sent that message to Iran.
How do you evaluate the Biden administration approach to reaction on this?
Well, Dan, it's just not working. You can see that plain as day. You can threaten, you can bluster, you can have the Secretary of State go out and make statements, but if you don't impose real costs on the Iranian regime itself, this will continue. The escalation risk the Secretary Blinken speaks of is from weakness, not strength. The Iranians understand serious responses. We've not provided a serious response, and until we do, I suspect you'll see more of this, whether it's commercial vessels or attacks on our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines.
The other thing that's been happening, I don't think we've had a chance to hear from you yet, is the questions about the Secretary of Defense who went missing for a while. We now know that he underwent a procedure to deal with a cancer diagnosis, prostate cancer diagnosis. The story's not really going away, partly because you now have bipartisan calls for him to be fired. You have the media furious because they love nothing more than a story about a lack of transparency. And here's John Kirby yesterday, call for number one, on the effort to get more information. Watch here.
Throughout every step of the way, from the time we were notified until, yesterday when we all found out that he had prostate cancer, there was no lack of curiosity on our part, no lack of or slackening of an effort to try to find out what was wrong with him.
You served in the national security team of the Trump administration. Can you imagine the Secretary of Defense not being reachable for several days and nobody knowing why?
Dana, it's incomprehensible, and as the former spokesperson, you must have just felt for John Kirby yesterday, because to say there's a lack of curiosity doesn't understand the core incompetence that surrounds how you can lose your Secretary of Defense, how the President of the United States can't know that his Secretary of Defense is having surgery, going under anesthesia, is in the hospital, and has got cancer. I spoke to President Trump as CIA Director and Secretary of State nearly every day. He certainly knew how to reach me instantaneously, and here they failed to do that. It's certainly a national security problem, because the world is counting on the United States to be able to respond quickly and efficiently, and if you don't know who's in charge, that's very, very hard to do. But second, it just demonstrates that this administration, after 3 years, still doesn't understand the basics of how to run an operation.
What about, from your CIA perspective, what do you think other leaders, our adversaries, think about when they look at this incident?
Doesn't take a CIA director to guess that, Dana. They're saying, what on earth is going on in the United States that a Secretary of Defense would choose somehow not to tell his boss that he was going to be off the grid for a bit? And they think, our friends think, oh my gosh, can I count on them if there's a tough time? By the way, if there are missiles fired into our troops in Syria, Iraq, or into Israel, will the United States be able to respond efficiently when we don't really know who's in charge? This chain of command, Dana, you know this, this chain of command is not a guessing game or subjective. It is real and serious for important reasons, and they blew it, and they still haven't told the American people exactly why or how this could have happened. And I'm confident that not only do our friends worry, but our adversaries see the chaos, the incompetence, and think maybe there's chaos and incompetence in many other places in our government as well.
Right. They go sleep at the switch. All right. Mike Pompeo, thank you for bearing with us with that breaking news. Appreciate it.
You bet. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Dana.
He wasn't testifying. He'd already turned us down on the subpoena. And the Justice Department put their head in the sand. So, yeah, this is all just made for TV drama.
So, Republicans still reacting after Hunter Biden's stunt on the Hill that we watched on our show yesterday. Today, he is before a judge in Los Angeles federal court to answer for felony tax charges. So we'll check in and see how that goes. Plus, you got a winter storm headed for Iowa. Baby, it's cold out there. Wow. Is that going to affect the caucus turnout? Will that affect the final tally, do you think?
I think most rural Iowa will still turn out, and no matter what the weather is, especially this upcoming election, this caucus.
Okay, we just want to stay on top of the story here in Lower Manhattan. Court should begin in about 24 minutes from now, and we're just seeing whether or not the former president has some comments before he goes in. Usually that's the case, and so we're standing by on that. Letitia James, we understand, is now inside the courtroom, which would suggest that she did not have comment before she went in, which is her prerogative, but we're just waiting to see whether or not that changed. So stand by. We're keeping an eye on it. We'll let you know when we know anything from inside there. All right, this now.
And my last message to you, Hunter Biden, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes.
I think it's clear and obvious for everyone watching this hearing today that Hunter Biden is terrified of strong, conservative Republican women because he can't even face my words. What a coward.
I'll make this bipartisan. I'll vote for the Hunter contempt today. You can get my vote. You can get my vote. But I want you to show the American people that you're serious.
The House Oversight and Judiciary Committees yesterday, they both passed resolutions to hold Hunter Biden in contempt for defying a congressional subpoena. This follows his surprise appearance on Capitol Hill yesterday that happened during America's Newsroom, and it was wild. Let's bring in our panel. Jessica Anderson, president of the Sentinel Action Fund, and Jessica Tarloff, co-host of The Five. Great to have you.
Good morning. Team Jessica.
It was quite a stunt, but I think as far as stunts go, it got what Hunter Biden wanted for that day, but maybe not beyond, or maybe even that hour. Like, he won an hour, but what is the strategic or political benefit of what he did?
Well, this is a PR stunt for sure, but it's also what Hunter Biden's been doing the whole time. Remember when he showed up to Capitol Hill a couple weeks ago, did this big press conference out front? He's not actually interested in answering the questions, and it goes to show just his lack of regard, I think, for the rule of law, for the role that Congress has in holding him accountable, and it's undemocratic. He does not set the terms or the procedures or the rules for the subpoena. The United States Congress does, and they were right to hold him in contempt.
So he kind of like jumped out of a cake yesterday. We're like, whoa, they were in here going, hey guys, Hunter Biden's on Capitol Hill. We need to go there now. Okay, roll this. This is Hillary Vaughn with Hunter in the hallway. Watch.
Mr. Biden, why did you put your dad on speakerphone with your business partners if he had no involvement in your business?
Do you have a dad? Does he call you?
Yes.
Answer the phone?
Yes.
Okay.
But why did you need to talk to him during business meetings if he had nothing to do with your business?
So a couple of folks are jumping on that comment as if to suggest that he pretty much confessed that his dad called him and not vice versa.
Yeah, I think that...
Was that some sort of an indictment, Jessica?
I don't think so. I think that people will go back to Devin Archer's testimony and actually read the transcript, not the Republican translation of it, and they'll see what Devin Archer said about those phone calls. They'll see that Devin Archer also said that Joe Biden was not on the take, that he didn't personally profit from this, and he was not part of their business. I agree, it was obviously a complete PR stunt, but I think it'll get him more than an hour, maybe even a whole day. We'll see what happens today in court for him when he's facing these federal tax evasion charges. But the narrative has switched on this. Over 50% of Americans think that this is a complete waste of time, and they're waiting. They're in election season now. They want to see, what are you delivering? What are you doing? And this is now the most ineffective Congress in American history. Mike Johnson, what does he have now? Maybe 2 weeks left, right? They had a revolt on the floor. He didn't get his rule passed. When you have a razor-thin majority and we're down to George Santos, you know, things are really tough, and people are spending their time grandstanding around about Hunter Biden, and the average American doesn't care about Hunter Biden.
Yeah, I think I have to respond to that on behalf of Republican colleagues in Congress. I mean, yes, Congress can do two things at once, right? This is not necessarily all political.
But what else
theater.
are they doing?
They're trying to pass the spending bill. They've already passed H.R. 2. It's sitting in the Senate. Biden's not interested
H.R. 2 is the border security
That's right,
bill.
and it's a strong, robust framework for the border that Biden refuses to actually acknowledge the problem on the border, and the Senate is holding it up.
But he has a 13.6.
Hang on, Jessica. Jessica, too. Hang on.
You have a Congress that is willing to say Democrats played favor before. It's not just the business dealings. It's the guns. It's tax evasion. It's a pattern of ignoring the law. They're holding him accountable. They promise strong oversight, and they have spending bills and a border package to get done. Let's do two things at once. That's a robust Congress I want to see.
You got a 30-second rebuttal.
Okay, great. First part, there's a $13.6 billion bill out of the White House on border security. Republicans should accept it. Joe Biden is playing ball there. Second point, Hunter Biden is not running for president. His father's running for president. You want to lock him up if that's what he deserves? I don't care, and I don't know a Democrat who does care about that. Maybe people in his own family. That's not what is motivating voters. They want to see a clear connection between Hunter Biden and his dad. Tom Emmer, for instance, was on with Neil Cavuto yesterday. Neil said, if you had the goods, you would have shown me already. And then Emmer kind of shrunk back in his seat.
No, he says, come to the testimony.
No, he doesn't. He said, we need
subpoena.
more time.
Have to actually answer your question.
It is not over.
And the tie is made.
Great to have you both.
Okay.
Good morning.
Jessica.
Team Jessica.
Yeah.
We love 1 and 2. You guys can argue over who's 1 and 2.
It was thing 1 and thing 2, right?
Thank you very
Look,
much.
I'll take it.
So the Biden administration now facing revolt from within. If you follow this story, there are countless young staffers at the White House and on the campaign swarming their bosses with anonymous protest letters, and the higher-ups are not happy about it. We'll get to that story coming up. Major shakeup in football in America. Within 24 hours, significant legendary coaches are now out of the game. Clay Travis will talk about it next.
I'm Kellyanne Conway, and I'll be providing analysis for Democracy 24. My 2 older children turned 18 right before the 2022 elections, and I said, I will never tell you how to vote or for whom to vote, but I will remind you where to vote and when to vote, because it is essential in our democracy to stand up, to speak up, and to show up.
Okay, don't want to leave this story. Just want to let you know that we're watching the door and we have yet to see him, okay? But when and if it happens and he speaks, we'll bring you there live. So stand by for that.
Eric Trump, his son, is joining him today. We got that piece of information. We just haven't seen them yet, so we will keep an eye on it. Yes. We'll bring it to you as it happens.
You got it. In the meantime, we have seldom seen a 24-hour period like this. Rocking the world of football, Alabama's Nick Saban announces his retirement, ending an era of dominance in college football. And New England Patriots head coach Bill Belichick, not to be outdone, is parting ways with the New England Patriots, leading one of the greatest dynasties in NFL history, along with Robert Kraft and Tom Brady, 24 seasons, 6 Super Bowl rings. Will anyone ever top that record? From Outkick, Clay Travis joins us now. Woo! I mean, what's your top line analysis on this, Clay? I mean, football, college, and especially the NFL, they've been going younger and younger with their head coaches. These men in their 70s, they have a tenure that is almost unmatched, and now they're saying goodbye.
Yeah, but thanks for having me, Bill. And I told you off air, I mean, even Dana was stunned by this, and we all know that Dana is the stalwart on the show when it comes to sports. But look, I think there are a couple of big-time takeaways here. Nick Saban, in my opinion, is the greatest college football coach of all time. Won 7 titles overall, 1 at LSU, 6 at Alabama. Bill, his teams were ranked #1. Listen to this. 2008, 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. It takes that long. #1 at some point in the season during that time. The most extraordinary college coaching career of all time. Then, Bill Belichick, I think probably the greatest coach of all time in the NFL, too. Now, what will be interesting is Belichick seems to want to go and take another job now. His tenure, I think, took a little bit of a hit when Tom Brady left and went and won a Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Brady's won 7, Belichick's won 6, because that debate had always been who's more responsible for the New England dynasty, Brady or Belichick. I think you have to say Brady now. I bet Bill Belichick wants another Super Bowl title without Brady to vindicate his overall coaching genius. I would expect that is where he is headed. We will see. But you also toss in Pete Carroll, who won a college football national championship at USC
Won a
and
Super
also
Bowl.
a Super Bowl with the Seahawks.
Yeah.
And we're talking about 3 of the most dominant legends of the last generation in coaching, all gone as head coaches in the space of about 24 hours.
Got it. We got a lot of breaking news, but we wanted to get this in. I think about Nick Saban. I don't even remember him coaching at LSU. I always have associated him with Alabama, and I follow the sport. And there are some great clips online of Nick Saban talking to his players, and I highly encourage young Americans watching this program to go find them. He has wonderful pearls of wisdom in his speeches and how he handles the kids around him. It's really great stuff. With regard to Belichick, noon press conference. We'll cover it live coming up shortly when Outnumbered rolls your way, and I'll be with the ladies on the couch. Thank you, Clay, for being here. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
I do remember Nick Saban at LSU, by the way.
Take it.
Okay, closing arguments in former President Trump's civil fraud trial. It's set to begin just moments from now. We're going to bring you any updates as we get them. We have not seen him yet, but he is in the building. New York City Mayor Eric Adams defending a decision to pull kids from their high school so the city could house migrants there. How he's justifying that as the outrage grows.
Close the borders and let's deal with the situation. It's unfair to each and every tax-paying American